Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for April 18th, 2023. I am your guest host, Karen Baker, filling in for Ed Gumnick. Ed is feeling much better, and we are giving him that week to catch up on some work, and he'll be back in the chair next week. We're speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meetings, I want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I will try to make sure that Gayle addresses them before we move on. You can also use the raise hand feature to let us know that you have a question or a comment. We are also streaming this webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I will share those as well. All right, let's get to the first item. Have you ever spent hours organizing minutia only to discover that you haven't made any progress towards your most urgent goals? Today, we're going to explore the distinction between efficiency and effectiveness, especially as it applies to organizing and productivity.
We chose this topic today because productivity is Karen's area of expertise. And since she so kindly covered for Ed last week and this week, we decided to go with Karen's idea for the discussion today. Understanding the difference between efficiency and effectiveness is a great distinction to make in terms of actually being productive in your day. It's not immediately apparent what the difference is between those two terms, so I'm going to ask you to hang in there with me while I do my best to explain the basic point we want to illustrate. Let's start with an example right off the bat. So imagine your company has decided that you need to work from home starting next week, like you have 7 days to make it happen. The problem is your home office is currently a total disaster, and you've been meaning to get it organized, but you haven't made the time for it so far. So now you have a deadline to get it done, and nothing inspires you like a deadline, right? So just like any other organizing project, you're not sure where to start. And if you're standing there looking into the room, you see maybe you see all the pens and pencils stacked on the bookshelf, all your boxes of pens and pencils, as well as pens that are sitting on the existing desk. And you decide that you're going to organize them all, like you're going to pull all those writing implements out and organize them. You're going to sort them by type and color and put them all in containers, and you're going to put labels on it too. You organize those pens in the most efficient manner as you work, and then the end result is very efficient too, because now you can easily find exactly the pen type that you want anytime. However, you spent 3 hours on those pens and you still haven't changed the landscape of the office much at all. In terms of meeting the goal to get your office ready to work in next week, you haven't really been very effective. Spending a lot of time organizing the pens wasn't actually an effective use of your time. You organized the pens efficiently, but you were not very effective in working towards your goal. Do you see the distinction between the two I'm just trying to describe there?
You efficiently did something that didn't really need to be done.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Thank you for sharing. You are so good. That's the exact point I'm trying to make. So now let's think about a concept we've talked about at the Clutter Fairy Weekly many times, and that's the concept of bigger buckets for sorting or filing things. You may efficiently create labeled files for all your paperwork and alphabetize them by name and put them all in a file drawer. And you know from experience how much time that process takes to do. You can be at it for hours and hours. We've suggested to you that it's a better use of your time to file in larger categories, so the filing goes faster without having to create so many files. So you may be very efficient in making all those beautiful file folders with labels and putting them in alpha order, but you can be more effective with your time if you shortcut the amount of work needed and fill in the larger categories, file in the larger categories instead. Deciding to sort into bigger buckets cuts down on the amount of sorting you have to do, and it also postpones some sorting until such time as you might actually need a certain document. If you filed all of the car things in one file, you can file the car paperwork very quickly. It's about the car, it goes in that one file. You most likely won't need to get any of that paperwork out again. But if you do, then you can sort the car file when that happens. So you've made initial filing faster because you're going to put all the car stuff in one file. And you postpone some of the sorting time until further down the road. So you're not going to actually do any more sorting until you actually need something. That's the most effective use of your time, to make the filing fast and easy, and to postpone some of the work until you really need to do it to find something.
Yeah, I find I have that experience a lot. Gayle and I have talked a lot about, there's this image of organizers always being perfectly organized in everything they do. And I'm here to tell you that is not the case. I pick and choose the areas in my life that I'm organized in. And the example we talked about was like me and receipts. Like I have receipts for business. I have receipts for, my random cup of coffee or whatever. All my business receipts go in one big bucket, and I go through them once a week. So I don't need to divide them up anymore beyond they're just business receipts. That's the bucket.
That's as much as you worry about it. And it allows you to capture you don't lose the receipts. You know where they are. They're designated. They have a designated parking space, and it's super easy to get them in there. And so it's the fastest, shortest cut to get there, to keep up with it and not lose it, which is the ultimate goal. Like you need that support for your tax returns. And so you got to have them, but you don't have to do a bunch of sorting work in the moment.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, and that's sort of the transition part for me, in terms of I'm taking all of those receipts and then I'm handling them once a week. So they're never overwhelming, in terms of, I've got 5 million of these receipts that I now need to scan and put into my bookkeeping. No, it's, maybe it's 5 to 7 in a week kind of thing. So it never gets overwhelming, and I don't have to spend any time, worrying about it or fine tuning that beyond what's necessary.
Right. And, with the day that you buy the stuff is when you have the receipt, you know where it is and you know what it's for. And, 3 months from now, you may not remember what that receipt is for. So being able to make a note on the receipt or whatever clues you need to add in, and then throwing it into the basket, means that you don't lose that detail while it's fresh in your mind.
Ginger has a comment. She says, I tend to assess the project, take pictures, make a plan or list for tackling it, and make the decisions. I do that a lot too. I have screenshots on your phone. That's a big bucket.
Right.
Big bucket.
Right.
I know where to go to find it.
Right. You may have to scroll through 10,000 things, but they're all in one place. Right. Yeah. Actually, if you think about it, the camera roll on your on your phone, is really like this bucket of everything that I thought to take a picture of. And it's all it's all filed in one place. You don't have any choice about that initially. And so it's, they provided you with a bigger bucket on the phone. That's my point. They made it easy for you. Okay. So, I have one more example. I see this concept at work often with moving clients, people who are trying to get ready to move. In their panic to pack for a move, they spend their time on the tasks that are the least important in terms of getting ready for movers to come. For instance, they'll pack all the books on the bookshelves, but they'll ignore all the random stuff piled up in the hallway. So packing books can be done very efficiently since they're easy to get into boxes quickly. But when you have limited time to prep for a move, ignoring the chaos on the floor to pack something easy is not the most effective use of your time. The most effective strategy for a move is to spend more time finding things that can be removed from the packing process, which can be quickly trashed or donated. And then setting a cutoff point after which you stop sorting, regardless of whether you think you're done sorting, and only pack to make sure that you're ready for the move on time. And that's the most effective use of your time. 100% of the time when I go to help moving clients, the first thing that I have to do for them is find out when their movers are coming, what's the drop dead deadline when the movers are showing up, and then looking at what is left unpacked and deciding what work can actually be done between now and when the movers come. And sometimes they call me 2 weeks out and it's like, oh yeah, you're done. You got to start packing. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough time to do anything of substance at this point. You just need to start packing. And so I hope that people call me early enough for me to say, okay, I think you can spend a week doing some, let's hit some big buckets of donations. Let's find stuff that's easy to get rid of. Let's pull out all the recycling and trash and make sure that stuff doesn't move. And then we can start packing. And if there's some obvious decluttering that can happen as you are packing, go ahead. But otherwise, you don't have time to focus on it beyond that. So my favorite moving clients are ones that call me a year in advance because they have a planned move and they let me come in and help them go through everything and get rid of as much as possible for the move. And that makes the move 1,000 times smoother on the back end. So that's what we all hope for. But most moving people don't think about it that early unless they've moved a lot. And then they understand how much time it's going to take to move. The people that call me latest into the game are the ones that haven't moved in a long time and they don't quite remember how long it's going to take to do it. They're also the ones that buy 25 boxes and think that that's going to be enough. And I always laugh and say, yeah, that's going to pack the kitchen. So in general, the point I'm trying to explain here is this. To be effective in accomplishing your goals, whether that's getting your filing done, getting ready to move, or setting up an office, you have to decide if the work you're considering doing is going to move you along towards the end goal you want and the time frame that you want. Or if it's work that needs doing, but won't move you towards your current goal, especially when you have a deadline to meet. And there's one more important idea to consider about being effective rather than being efficient. Taking the most direct path to accomplishing your current goal can only help you manage your limited resources of energy, stamina, and physical capacity. If you have a finite pool of energy, or you have limitations to what you can do physically, finding the most directly effective path through to your goal will use those resources most wisely and help you fight burnout too, which we're going to talk about next. Okay, before we go on to the next topic, I want to say thanks to our latest Patreon subscriber, Marsh, for her generous contributions to the Clutter Fairy Weekly and Patreon. Thank you to her and all of our generous patrons for supporting the production of the webcast every month. We appreciate your support so much. Okay, let's go on to the next topic.
All righty. So we're talking about decluttering burnout. When you're wrangling a long-term decluttering project, sooner or later, your energy wanes and decision fatigue kicks in. Next, we are going to talk about the causes of decluttering burnout and offer some strategies to help you move past it.
So I know that all of you have reached this point at some point in your project where you're like, oh my God, I've been decluttering for 5 days, 5 months. There's always a point at which you reach overwhelm where your brain shuts down and you can't take it anymore. And the causes are varied and multiple. When the project is so huge that you can't get it done in days, but you actually need weeks or months to complete it, that's always a potential cause for burnout. When the items you have to access are very sentimental material and emotionally draining to handle. When you think you're done, and then you discover another stash of stuff. So somebody was talking about this last week or 2 weeks ago, about they thought they'd gotten all the photographs sorted, and then they found 4 more boxes in a closet somewhere. You emotionally think you're okay, and you do all the work and you think, oh, I got to the end. And then you open the closet and you find 4 more boxes and realize now you got to start over. It's like, oh man, that'll give you burnout in a big hurry. When the items that you have to process are very sentimental material and they're really emotionally draining to handle, then we get to decision fatigue much faster when each decision is very, very emotionally difficult. That one leads to burnout really quickly. When the space you have to work in is very tight and it's difficult to navigate. So I have this problem sometimes when I go to people's houses and we go into, like, let's say it's the junk room and it's really full, or it's an area where there's a thin path that you can go through, but there's not a lot of space to walk or sort of turn around, lift, bend, can't stack things really. And when you have to carefully walk through a space to A, not fall down and get hurt, or B, to not be breaking things as you're trying to move around, that added physical impairment to doing the work and being sort of tightly constrained inside the space is an added level of stress and difficulty in managing and doing a sorting project. And that helps you go to burnout quickly. And I find that I tend to trip on things more, and I tend to I end up bumping things on the way by with what I'm carrying or my own body. I catch things with my backside or my knees, and I end up knocking things down. And so it's a much more, it creates a much more reluctant moving forward kind of place to work. And I get burnout in those kind of spaces really quickly. There's also the place where when the stuff is in an environment that's a strain because it's too hot or too cold, it's damp or it's super humid, maybe there's poor air circulation, or it smells really bad, or it's extra dirty or bug infested. And when you have to work in an environment, and this happens like when you go and work in the garage or the shed, or something in the backyard that's not really climate controlled, and maybe it's been ignored for a while. Maybe you have to get up into the attic and it's 1,000 degrees in the attic. Maybe you have to go in the basement and the basement has been damp or flooded before. And so there's an odor problem in there. Sometimes it's just the environment. It's not as much working on the stuff. It's that the environment is physically demanding, and it makes it more of a pain to do the work. And that gets you into burnout too. When you're organizing everything in a very detailed and efficient way, and you find that the project time keeps stretching out farther and farther, and it keeps you from working effectively towards the goal, like we talked about, if you go in there and work on something to a very, I'm trying to think of it as to the nth degree, that you really organize it in a very detailed way, you can spend a whole lot of time on a little bitty pile working on it that way. And then you realize that you thought you were going to get through this room in a weekend, and really you're going to be in the room for, ever. And so sometimes realizing that will shut you down in a real hurry. So I do want to give you some strategies to get past the burnout. That's the most important part of this conversation. The first one is take a break. Sometimes I get emails from people and say, I've been working on it for 5 months, but I stopped and I just can't, I can't work on it right now. And they are basically telling me, they're confessing to me, and they think I'm going to tell them that they're doing something bad or wrong. And my point is, sometimes you got to take a break. Like, everybody needs to take a break when they're working on a project. You can't do it 24/7. You can't do it 8 hours a day unless you're a super person. And any kind of a break is only going to help your mind rest. And so the scale of your break is going to depend on what you're working on and how serious your burnout feels. If it's not too bad, maybe take an hour to do something satisfying and fun, and then come back to the project later today, or take off the rest of the day and start fresh tomorrow. If you're feeling completely over it, which happens, right? You can plan a full-scale vacation, air quote, vacations from the project, schedule a week or two of hiatus, and then set a day with yourself to return to work. It's really a function of you're really creating self-care in that way. You're saying, I know I need all of my mental capacity and physical capacity to make decisions and move this stuff around. Like, there's this whole, I have to make decisions all the time part of the project. And then there's I have to do all the physical wrangling part of the project. And both of those resources can get burnt out. And so allowing yourself a break from all the decision-making with a plan to come back to it whenever, whether that's in an hour or this afternoon or tomorrow or next week. And then giving yourself that physical break as well can only be helpful. So think of it as self-care. You're not doing something, you're not giving up on your project by taking a break. You're allowing yourself some self-care. Sometimes you can shift for a while to another project that is less challenging, or maybe has a simpler, clearer endpoint. For example, if you're feeling burned out as you work through a collection of sentimental items that really invoke strong feelings, you might shift for a while to purging your clothes in the closet instead, if that feels less distressing. When I work with clients who are dealing with the things they inherited, or the box of photos or keepsakes that came from somebody who has passed away, that's usually a very a collection that's very ripe for distress and upset. And it's a process that I try to break up for the client so that they don't feel like, it's not like when you're in the bathroom and you're going to go through all of the lotions and potions in one sitting. We're not going to go through all those keepsakes in one sitting. We're going to go through a part of it, and here's a select slice of it, and see how you do and see how you feel. And then maybe we're going to stop and go, work with the pet stuff and then come back and do another slice of sentimental stuff. The idea being that you can make better headway if you don't try to push yourself to be emotionally responding and sad for a long period of time. So if you can do a little bit and then go do something that is, it's more entertaining, or it's just less stressful in general. Some people find, oh gosh, I can't think of a good example, but I've had people say, yeah, the shoes really are, I'm very attached to all my shoes. So shoe sorting is a problem for them. And other people, shoes, whatever, let me throw them out. So we all have things that we are sentimentally attached to, and it's different for everybody. But once I figure out that you're sentimental about something, then I'm going to give it to you in much smaller bites and try to interrupt that process with you working on something else that isn't distressing, just to give you that mental break. Anne, are you raising your hand over there? Okay. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Last summer, I wanted to fumigate my house. So I needed to uncover all the surfaces. I washed the bedding. I took the bedspreads to the cleaners. And before doing all that, I took everything piled on the beds and put them into plastic storage bins. Well, now I don't know where anything is.
Right, because they're not in their regular home anymore.
And I don't want to go into those storage bins and try to sort them, but there must be something I can do. Where would I start?
So if you think of it as, it's just like a move, right? You have everything in moving boxes right now. And so you can approach it like you are unpacking from a move and focus on the things that allow you to function the best. So you want to make sure that the kitchen is put together so that you can cook. And you want to make sure that the bathroom is put together so that you can shower and get dressed.
These are mostly papers and books that were piled on the bed, and now they're in these containers.
Okay, so it's not regular stuff. It's just paper and books.
These are very sentimental papers and books.
Ah, okay. So do you think that there's anything else mixed in there that you need to worry about?
Maybe
like
there might be some receipts.
Right. Okay. So then I would say, open one box at a time, and don't do more than one a day. If you want to go through them and make sure that there's nothing in there that you need to pull out that's active or current, like you said, a receipt or a bill or something like that, that's not part of the sentimental stuff. Pull those things out and deal with them appropriately. And then if you want to leave the sentimental stuff in the boxes, then it can just become a keepsake box, right?
There's things I was working on. I'm writing a novel.
Okay. So it's part of a project.
Yeah.
Okay. And so do you have an area where you're working on that stuff?
Well, right now I've got a new small stack of things on one bed.
Okay.
It hasn't come back the way it was. But I mean, there were about 6 drawers full of things, big drawers, big, fat, thick, high drawers.
Okay. And you have access to the drawers again now, right?
And those and all that stuff. I mean, I bought these stacks of drawers so that I could put everything somewhere
Right.
and clear off the surface. But so now there's only a couple of small stacks of things on one of the beds. And
Well, it sounds like if you want access to the stuff that you packed up, that we need to unpack them and put them back in their drawers, in their storage
they don't
areas.
have another belonging place. I just been using the bed as my, I can't put all that stuff on my desk. So that's where I was putting it, on the bed.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe there's another place. I can't think what. There they could be inactive, or they could be actively available for use.
Okay. So if you have the boxes near where you're working, you can at least get into the boxes if you need to. My concern is that there's other stuff in there, and if they came off the bed, they're probably better in the boxes themselves instead of on your bed. And then you just need the boxes available to you where you're working.
I just need to organize the boxes.
Yeah, that'd be
Each
helpful.
box has 3 drawers,
Yeah.
three big fat drawers.
Okay. It would be helpful. And if each has 3 drawers, then you can work one drawer at a time. You don't have to do the whole box at once.
Right.
You can do one drawer at a time, and that'll get you there. And don't try to, because I'm sure if it's all paper and books, it's very detailed work. So you want to do one drawer of a box in one sitting and then stop. So I have some more ideas about burnout. So let me see what I can do about that. We talked about self-care, so I'll pick up from there. One thing to do, we talked about shifting from, if you have a project that's less challenging and maybe has a simpler endpoint, you can shift back and forth between a hard one and an easy one. You can also go smaller scale. So if the garage is too overwhelming, if you're working on the garage and it's too overwhelming, maybe you can leave that alone for a day while you clean out the junk drawer in the kitchen. So that's a much smaller version. So if you're all hung up in being in the garage, because that's such a big space, I would divvy up the garage into zones and only work in one zone at a time. Or B, if you're just really overwhelmed that day, maybe you can go inside and work on something much, much smaller. Sometimes just shifting down to a tiny pile is the better thing to do. You can reflect on your project and regroup a little bit. So instead of working in the trenches on a project, use a planned work session where you would have normally been working to take a step back and review the goals and the steps that you have in mind. Remind yourself about the motivations you had at the start about the project and what you're trying to accomplish, and consider whether they still apply. So focus on what will be different and better in your life when you finish the project. Sometimes it's when you're in the trenches, it's hard to remember that after you do all this, even though it's icky right now, you're going to be super happy with it later. And so the end result is going to make you smile, smile, smile. So that's one thing you can do, is just pause and look at the project and think about where you're going to go and what your motivations are. And if you're somebody that likes to play games, you can kind of gamify the work a little bit. Decide what constitutes a win. For instance, you can say, I have a win today if I've gotten 5 things out of the house for donation, and then give yourself a reward to celebrate the victory. Like, then I get to go have coffee with my friend, or I get to go watch a movie, or even better, you can take a nap. The idea is just to set a little marker for yourself. Today, I win the game if I get 5 things out of your house. And this is Ed's version of, if I walk every day, it's a win. So if I walk 10 steps down the driveway, or I walk 2 miles around the neighborhood, it's still a win if you actually get up and go outside and walk. And so you can gamify it too and say, I put 5 pieces of laundry up. I took 10 things to the donation place. All of that stuff. So give yourself a little mid project game to play to help you go along and keep focusing.
It seems like in terms of Decluttering Burnout that garages in particular are very challenging.
Right?
Several folks have mentioned having problems getting through the garage. And I think you kind of touched on that a little bit in terms of they're usually uncomfortable spaces.
It's hot, it's dirty, it's buggy.
Right? It's a random assortment of stuff, so it can be hard to stay focused. You've got to work harder to stay focused on what you're doing.
It requires more physical work, right? Like the stuff that's in the garage is usually awkward, large, heavy. It's stuff that you need somebody big to carry some of the things around. Like it's just designed to be annoying from the beginning to the end. That's the truth about garages. It's just, A, it's where you take everything to die. Yes. And B, it's never climate controlled. It's never pleasant to be in there. You're standing on concrete. That's the one that gets me the most, is spending, 5 hours on the concrete, carrying heavy things around. It is just designed to make my body hurt everywhere. So it is a room that is annoying. And it's one that is best chopped up into zones for sure. Like you don't go out there expecting to get it all done in one day by any stretch of the imagination. And you do it like, you better be doing in Houston, you better be doing it now, because in June, it's going to be too hot to be out there unless you go out at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so it is definitely a place where you have to chop it down into smaller pieces. You have to try to do it when the temperature's the best possible that you can do it in. And you're going to have to, like, it'd be all great if you could sort the whole garage and make all, one round of stuff that goes to heavy trash and one round of stuff goes to electronic recycling, for instance, or, it would be great if you could do it all and make those errands one time, but that would require you to be able to manage the entire garage in one day because it's open and you can't like put it all in the driveway and then pause and go away for a week and come back if you want to still own the stuff when you're done. So it is a project that has to be managed because of its, physical, like you're basically outdoors working. And so you can't just drive everything, pull everything on the driveway and leave it there. You got to get to some stopping point that you can put everything back. So there is going to be some inefficiency in terms of emptying the garage or moving the stuff around more than once. But I think that you have to accept that trade-off in order to manage the garage in a way that doesn't destroy you physically or make you super miserable. And so you may have to make 3 trips to where the toxic chemicals get disposed. And you may have to, put out heavy trash 2 months in a row and that kind of stuff. So it's a multi-step project that requires way more than one weekend and certainly more than one day, and that you should expect to tackle it in stages. And so make those, in terms of planning, we've talked about planning projects, plan that project in bites that you can manage. Like today, I'm going to go into this quarter of the garage and I'm going to try to organize all of the tools over there. And then I'm going to find all those tools that I need to dispose of somehow. And I'm going to work on disposing of them during the week. And that's the only part you're going to try to do in one sitting. And truthfully, when people call me about garages from May until October, I'm like, no, I'm not doing garages right now. I don't want to pass out on the concrete in your garage. I'm sorry. I'm too old for that. I'm too menopausal for that. Forget it. And so, yeah, I'm not 30 anymore and I'm not sweating in your garage in July in Houston. Sorry.
Well, and you saying that, Connie made a point about sort of the impact of your health. Like if you're older, maybe have some health issues, that's going to impact, how quickly you might burn out. Like you have to keep that in mind and, maybe lower your expectations a little bit.
Right. And not push yourself to the point where, once you get heat stroke or once you have pulled a muscle, then you shut down the project for at least a week. So you might as well make sure that you're generous and kind to yourself in terms of working in the garage and do it in small enough bites that you are not debilitated or destroyed from the work that you do. That's the most important point. Like if you actually want to get to the end of it, you can't destroy yourself in the middle. Fair point, Connie.
Yeah. I mean, that's ties into, your point about the self-care. Like you've
Mhm.
got to show a certain amount of awareness of how you're feeling. And that applies, I think, physically and mentally, like what you're talking about with the sentimental items. Like you've kind of got to periodically take stock. How am I feeling? Is this starting to wear on me? Maybe this is time for me to get up and take a break.
Right. And the emotional one, how that initially that shows up, if you're super sentimental and it's stuff that, in particular for somebody that has passed away, then you'll end up crying a lot. So crying is very debilitating in terms, it's cathartic, but it's also debilitating in terms of decision making. And so I periodically stop and notice, am I finding this too hard to make it? Is a decision beyond me? Am I struggling way too hard to make a decision here? If you're looking at the same card for half an hour and you still can't make a decision about it, then I would say you have now reached decision fatigue, regardless of whether it was the third card you picked up or the 30th card you picked up. If it starts to take you too long to make a decision and you feel really uncomfortable about trying to make one, and you feel like you're forcing yourself to make one even though you don't feel ready, then I think you have to recognize that means you're not in the mental space to process that paperwork right now. Sometimes all I do in that moment is stop the decision making and just sort. Like, don't try to decide anything about it. Just sort it. Because, you inherit paperwork and it's a big old jumble of stuff. And who knows when the last time was it got sorted out. So unless it's already super organized when you receive it, you can always put in a little bit of time by putting all the photographs together and putting all the cards together and putting all the newspaper cutouts together and putting all the 3D stuff, like, I don't know, putting all the school paperwork together. You can just sort into some piles. And that isn't decision making as much as recognition. This is a piece of schoolwork. This is a photo. This is a card. And you're not having to make any choices. You're just sorting. And then if that's all you can do today, great. And you can come back to that stuff and, okay, now I sorted everything and here's the pile of cards. So now I'm going to look through the cards right now. And it sort of helps you with the decision making if you're looking at all the cards at once, because there's similar things. And you can see all of here's the 15 cards that my dad wrote to my mom. And so then you have 15 and you can pick if you feel up to it that day, you can pick your favorite 5. Or you can decide that you want to keep all the ones from your dad to your mom, but you don't care about the ones from, the random family friend to your mom. Those aren't as important. And so you can filter them that way. But if you get stuck in that sentimental stuff, pause on the decision making. Notice that you're having trouble with decisions and pause on the decision making if you need to, and just sort for a little while. And sometimes that allows you to take a little bit of break and a little step back. And then you can go back to one of the piles and see what you can do with it.
We're also having some fun discussions about things that make the process go easier. Marty has mentioned putting on a movie while they're cleaning or decluttering. Some people are talking about music. Joycey's saying a glass of wine. Like,
hey, sister, whatever works for you, right? And you know what? I will tell you that it's good to put on music that and it's good to watch a movie that you already know what's going on. It's like, because you don't want to be distracted completely by the movie because you don't know what's happening. So watch a movie that you already know the storyline. So in your mind, you know what's going on because you've already seen it. And then you can sort of half follow along and you don't feel like you're missing anything because you already know what's going to happen.
Yeah, Steve is saying the movie distracts him.
Right. It needs to be one that you already know what it is. And so then you can keep it in mind.
I have 2 standards that I use in terms of movies and music. So if it's music, it's always Motown.
There you go.
That's just, my personal preference.
Right.
If it's movies, they do. I see Bridget with the thumbs up. If it's movies, I plan for those Harry Potter marathons that seem like they come on every weekend. Because the best part is it literally takes all day because there's like 7 movies that they got to show. So I have that on in the background, and it's always on for the whole day. So I get a lot done on Harry Potter marathon day.
And the movie storylines, exactly, like you can just glance at the screen and know what's going on and keep going, right? Like that's the biggest part. That's hilarious. Yeah. I have to when I'm when I'm trying to do this project and I'm writing the material, I can't run the TV because that's too distracting, but I can play music on the phone and sing along, or, that's enough of a accompaniment that doesn't distract me from doing the writing part. And so whatever works. I like the wine idea. I will tell you that if the wine helps you with your emotional management of your processing sentimental stuff, great. If the wine makes it harder for you, then maybe you should hold off when you're doing sentimental stuff. It just depends on how you react. If you get more maudlin as you drink, then maybe that's not the best time to do that stuff. And I see Joyce's hand up.
I was the wine girl.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. I just have a glass and sip on it, and like they said, music. Sometimes I have like soft and mellow, and sometimes I need just harder rock. But it just kind of makes you feel like it's not work.
There you go, right?
Sip
It's more
here, sip there,
relaxing. It's more casual. And see, I love that that's like a mental, it's a mental game you're playing with yourself. It's like, I'm just sipping wine and working on the stuff. Like you're helping yourself be relaxed. That's great.
Glass of wine a day never hurt anybody. And can I make a comment about the garage?
Yes.
I just wanted to tell you your motivation on doing a little at a time. I have a tendency to want to do it all at once.
Right.
And
we all do.
That's a failure waiting to happen because you just don't want to do it again.
Right.
So if you see the progress though, and make yourself do that, I have a few fatigue issues too. It makes it so much easier, and you have the results. So like when I think about working on anything, I'm going, well, the garage is pretty good. I try to maintain it maybe every week. I'll just the stuff that kind of goes in there. But my basement is like the Monica closet. So I need to apply it to that.
Well, and can you get out in there and move around?
Oh yeah, it's fine. It's just I've just been like doing a lot of stuff, and we moved in not too long ago. 3 years. But still, everything just gets put down there, and I just need to organize it.
Everybody has leftovers from the move that they can't be bothered to unpack. That's 100%. Every move is like that. Unless you hire organizers who won't go away until all the boxes are undone. you have to come back to I can't be bothered with these boxes right now. And 3 years later, it goes by and there's boxes to unpack. But you can tackle the basement in the same kind of way. Like go down and work on stuff on the floor, or go work on the bookshelf, or anything like that, where you can subset the basement, work in a specific area, and then go back away again. Steve has his hand up next.
Yeah, how y'all doing?
Good,
my
how are
problem
you?
is I'm in the family's house that my parents built in '65.
Oh my
and
gosh.
my mom has kept every piece of paper known to mankind.
Yeah.
Everything is absolutely full. So it's like you start working on anything, it's like, okay, you want to take out, the only way to take anything out to sort like a closet and then put the stuff you want to keep back in the closet is to take it outside onto the front yard.
My goodness.
There's no space in the house left to move anything, to work on anything else.
Yeah,
and that's the problem I've got. And it just totally burns you out from even starting the project.
Right. Because it's so hard to work in there, right? That was the one I was talking about, when it's so hard to navigate and you can't get around in there to move or work. It's very debilitating. So I guess the question would be, is there an area in the room, in the house, where you could concentrate on uncovering a surface, a table, or creating an open space where you could put up a temporary table that could be your work zone? In terms of being able to make forward progress, I would go in and see if there's some place that you can clear out a little corner for yourself to work in without having to go in the garage. Go in the yard. Like
Yeah.
Clearly working in the yard is not an effective solution. And while you're that tightly packed, it's really important to work in a smaller scale. So you can't undo the whole closet, but you maybe can take the stuff off the floor of the closet and work with that stuff. So keep working in smaller bites until you cleared enough space that you can work in bigger chunks.
Yeah. And
find yourself a place that you can spend your time right now, creating a zone, clearing out a zone where you can work and put up a table and have a chair. And then that's your, work zone until you get farther along.
And the issue with that is every flat surface is full, and it's like, it just keeps coming in, it seems like.
Right.
Between Amazon boxes and, I work, and so I run out of time.
Are your parents still there?
Dad passed away, and I moved mom into a residential home a couple years ago.
So you're there alone now?
Yeah, with 2 dogs.
Okay, cool.
And it's the other half of this question is, like trying to find an organizer and stuff in Denver. They're outrageously expensive. I mean, they come in and it's $2,700 per room to start.
Yeah, when it's something that dense, we're looking at hours and hours and hours of work. So I'm not surprised that the bill is expensive.
I just need somebody to come in here and I just need extra muscle to get rid of some of this stuff,
Right.
I need an extra body.
Well, and you might consider excuse me, you might consider going out to TaskRabbit and hiring somebody by the hour to come and help you move things around. And sometimes moving out something that's a big footprint, like a large piece of furniture, or there's too many bookcases or something. Sometimes moving out something bigger helps you get an open space faster.
Okay.
If you can focus on, okay, I don't need this couch. I don't want this couch. If I move it out, then there's 12 square feet of the floor that I can work in.
Okay. And technically, this still isn't my house yet, so I can't do too much rearranging, getting rid of furniture and stuff because it's my mom's.
Is she still mentally capable?
She's a little old lady. She could do some. I mean, I like her to finish off her genealogy and find somebody to help her with that. But
no. I just mean in terms of, could you have conversation with her about,
yes,
hey mom, I want to donate away this couch, and my friend needs it or whatever, and just sort of ask her what you're doing and get permission. And I would just, instead of saying I'm getting rid of all your stuff, you can say, I want to talk to you about this couch. And so that it'll be less overwhelming for her, and she can sort of understand your plan. And
because I mean, the parents were the Depression era, and like my sister and her fiance passed away, and they kept her whole house in storage. And it's like there's something else I gotta go through, and it's like,
oh my gosh. That's
the fire department wouldn't like me to go in with a flamethrower, so
No, because once you start a house like that on fire, it burns forever. It is not easy to put out a house like that. And I will tell you that you also have because the paperwork is old, it is not very likely to have. It's probably much easier to make a shred pile out of it than you think. So if you just go to one stack and flip through something that's really old, as opposed to the new stuff that's coming in, if you're going to an older pile, it's all the events have gone by, the relevance to the tax returns have gone by. You can get into really old stuff, and hardly anything needs to be kept. And so it's very easy to say, I flipped through this whole pile real fast. Nothing matters. I can now put this all in shred, or I can go burn it, or I can throw it out, or whatever you want to do with it. But you can clear some space in a hurry if you go to old paperwork first.
One question I have about that: what does everybody do when they do find the old stuff? It's like, do you open the box and look inside, or you just throw the box away without looking? I've done both.
No. I would open the box, because you just want to make sure. You don't know whether it was packed well or packed crazy. And you don't know if there's going to be one, like there's one time I was in a garage going through a pile of paperwork that was sitting on top of a tire. and I found somebody's original Social Security card mixed in with all their paperwork. So, you know, you never know how something's going to be accidentally scooped up and thrown into a box. And then it's super, super important. So you at least want to go through and say, I've filtered through here and I'm sure there's nothing valuable or important that anybody needs in here. And now I can take the whole box and take it out. But you do want to verify first.
Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, like I said, there's this, the house is full and it's like, I got to get something out of here to be able to
Concentrate on furniture and clearing a space to work and going through old paperwork first. And that'll give you some large chunk wins to get them out.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for sharing, Steve. I appreciate it.
All right, Gayle, I think we are about out of time.
Oh, okay. So we need to do a tittle. All right. The tittle is going to be specifically about this project. So do you need to do your announcements first?
Yes. Let's
Okay, go ahead.
do that. All right. So I just want to remind everyone that Gayle and Ed will be back for the next live webcast on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 at noon Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. And you can watch your email for information about the upcoming topic. I believe Gayle's got some signs.
Yes, I do.
If you are watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To receive notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. Ed and Gayle would love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, topic suggestions in the YouTube comments, and you can also reach them through the website clutterfairyhouston.com.
That would be us. Okay, so let's do the tittle for today. The tittle is titled, Is It Really Worth It? This week's assignment is to evaluate the work you're planning to do against your ultimate goal and the timeline to see if it's the most effective thing you could be doing right now. So you want to think about your current project goals in any area of your life. You can pick any project that you need to work on and pick one of those goals to reevaluate. Find your to-do list for the project goal or make one. What steps have you planned to accomplish this goal? So if you've done any planning around a goal, around a project, I'm sure you've got a to-do list started somewhere of the things you need to accomplish. Let's go look at that list of steps that you're going to do. And for each of those steps, ask yourself this: do I have to do this to accomplish the goal by the deadline? Or does this step directly affect my accomplishing the goal? If the answer is yes, then this step is a keeper and you want to keep it on your to-do list. If the answer is no, you don't have to accomplish the goal, to accomplish the step in order to meet the goal or the deadline, then maybe this task is work that you want to do, but it doesn't need to be done while you're working on this current project goal. Decide whether you want to save this task to do later and perhaps make it part of another project or not do it at all. And that way you can see if you can streamline your path a little bit and be more effective in accomplishing your project. So give it a whirl, come back and tell us next week. We'll be back doing our normal thing next week, and we will cover the tittle when Ed comes back, and you guys can tell him how much you missed him. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much, and we will see you guys next week.